The Monster Mile is a nickname for Dover International Speedway. There's a good reason for such a mean name for this week's NASCAR track. We'll tell you what's so mean about it. Greg Biffle may be on the move at season's end. He's already talking about a switch from one major team to another. We have the story. Newton Moore has been on the NASCAR beat for a long time. Adam Alexander talks to him about what he's seen and where he's currently working. Those stories, our Fans Car Fans Forum question of the week, and Mary Scully's point of view, all next here on Raceline. Brought to you by Mechanics Wear, the #1 glove in NASCAR.
A 2-week-long stay in Charlotte is finally over, and we're heading up the coast to Dover, Delaware to hit the Monster Mile this week in NASCAR. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe Moore. Welcome to this week's edition of Raceline. And again, a special welcome to our troops worldwide watching Raceline on the American Forces Network. Again, thanks a lot for what you do. We're glad we can bring NASCAR news to you here on Raceline. There are now just 14 races to go before the chase for the championship begins. And there's some big winners and big losers from last week at the Lowe's Motor Speedway in Charlotte in the running of the Coke 600. Let's take a look. Dale Earnhardt Jr. still leads the championship point standings, but now just by 5 points over a fast-closing Jimmy Johnson after Jimmy's win last week at Charlotte. And Jimmy's headed to Dover, where he won both races in 2002. Look out, Junior. Jeff Gordon took a hit in the points, falling a spot. He's now in 4th position as Matt Kenseth moved up to 3rd. Elliott Sadler gained 3 spots with his 5th-place run at Charlotte. Elliott has the 7th spot for now. Ryan Newman had a bad night last week. He dropped 3 spots, now in the 9th position. But Ryan won both races at Dover last year. Further back, Michael Waltrip did some good for himself. Michael picked up 6 positions, but still is back in 24th. Currently, there are 12 drivers within 400 points of the championship point leader, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Now, headed to Dover this weekend, you look at Junior, he's a former winner there, but also you look at guys who need wins. Jimmy Johnson trying to take over the point lead. As we told you, he won both races there in 2002. Ryan Newman, who really needs to turn things around, he won both races there last year. And Tony Stewart won both races at Dover in 2000. With a preview of the MB&A All-American 400, here's Raceline producer Mike Briald.
Joe, over the last 2 years at Dover, 2 drivers have dominated. Last year it was Ryan Newman taking both races at the Monster Mile, and the year before it was Jimmy Johnson doing the same thing. Ryan Newman needs to turn things around after a bad start to a 2004 season. For Jimmy Johnson, he's coming off one of the biggest wins of the year and going back to a track he loves.
The track is high banked, a lot of grip, and probably one of the best things about it and funnest things about it is the center of the corner is probably 20 feet lower than the straightaways. So when you come down the straightaway and you go off in the corner, the car almost jumps down into the center of the corner, and you land down in the corner and you're sliding around trying to gather it back up and get it pointed and get back in the gas, and then you've got to climb back up out of that hill and jump up onto the straightaway again. And
Tony Stewart also loves Dover. He won both races there in 2000 and needs a boost to this season. The Monster Mile might be just the right medicine to get Tony back on track.
It just seems like if you get your car to rotate through the center really good, then you have to get it up off the corner. But the guys can find ways to get in their cars to get off the corner, but can't get them to rotate through the center. So the guy that can get his car to do both seems to be the biggest key, is just getting it to where it'll turn, but still get up off the corner at the same time.
And there's a lot of veterans who've done well at Dover. Mark Martin and Rusty Wallace have each won 3 times there. Mark Martin hasn't won in 2 years, but Rusty has won already this year.
Again, the big story there is going to be the tires and the spoiler, how the track's going to relate to it. It was great bringing that thing back to 400 miles. It creates a better race. I like racing on the concrete. I've won the place many times. It's been a great track for me, and I love going there because it is a fun place to run. You can run turn 3 and 4. You run on the bottom, the top, and the middle, and turn 1 and 2. Two distinct different corners there.
The place is just awesome to race on. I don't know what's unique about it, but it's just fantastic. It's a great place to race. I always love going there.
So, Joe, there's no shortage of drivers who really need a win desperately at Dover this weekend. But, you know, the Monster Mile is not quick to give up victory lane to just anyone. It tears up race cars and it tears up drivers. After all, that's why they call it the Monster Mile.
Thanks, Mike. Going into Dover, the way things are looking right now, we could have some major changes in the points next week here on Raceline.
Greg Biffle may be on the move at season's end. He's already talking about a switch from one major team to another. We have the story. And John Andretti talks about trying to get back into the sport. First, here's a look at this week's championship points on our Mechanics Wear scoreboard. More of today's show right after this.
When you first see those turns screaming towards you at 165 miles per hour, you think this is impossible. It's insane. But then you do it, and soon you're thinking there's no place on earth you'd rather be than Richmond.
Don't miss the SunTrust Indy Challenge June 26th at Richmond International Raceway. Call 866-455-RACE. And for a chance to win a 2004 Corvette convertible, visit any SunTrust branch before June 30th. No purchase required. See branch for rules.
Richmond, it's racing perfection.
There's more to NASCAR racing than cars going in circles. Raceline takes you behind the action. Every week we go to the shops, to test sessions, and face-to-face with the biggest names in NASCAR racing. People make those cars perform, and we bring those people to you every week on Raceline with Joe Moore.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Raceline. Tiffany's not with us this week, so I've got the news covered here. The latest stuff coming out of Charlotte last week, and a lot of rumors already. Seems like the Lowe's Motor Speedway is where it all starts, no matter if it's the first race there in the springtime or their fall race, which typically the real big rumor stuff starts to roll then. But let's go down the list of things we heard last week. Talked last week here on the show about Greg Biffle. More news coming out about him possibly leaving the Roush organization at the end of this season and going to Richard Childress Racing, maybe to drive a fourth car for RCR, but maybe to take over the AOL Chevrolet, especially when you look to see what Johnny Sauter has done in that car this year. Not a whole lot of good has come out of that situation. Could very well be a good place for Greg Biffle going into next year. And Biffle says a lot of the problems with his team this year is bad calls by upper management.
You know, I'm looking at the front balance and things like that. I'm looking at every part of the race car that I can, making suggestions and things like that. But, you know, I'm hired to drive the race car, and that's what I want to try and focus on, being the best that I can be behind the wheel.
Meanwhile, over at RCR, Johnny Sauter, he admits readily this has not been a stellar season for him.
I don't know. I mean, it can go both ways. I mean, there's guys that have had just horrible seasons, and then there's guys that have had mediocre seasons and guys that have great seasons. But I'd classify ours as mediocre so far. I mean, our worst finish is the 30th place finish, and we haven't had a DNF yet, so we finished every race for being a rookie, and you know, we're not as high in the points as we thought we should be right now.
Then you got the DEI team and Michael Walter. We talked last week about the possibility of Michael possibly being out of that 15 car at the end of the year. Well, here's more ammunition for that story. The Napa deal, the sponsorship deal, ends at the end of this year. Now, Michael did himself a tremendous amount of good, finishing second last week at the Lowe's Motor Speedway. But again, that's his one shining moment in this entire season. And the DEI guys are looking very favorably over their shoulders at Martin Truex Jr., who's already won 4 times in the NASCAR Busch Series and is already a contender for the championship for them this year. Might be some big changes before the season's over. Another Busch Series ride change. Todd Bodine got the call last week from Whelen Engineering and team owner Teddy Marsh. He'll drive the Whelen car for the rest of this year, replacing Dave Blaney. Blaney, meanwhile, goes to work trying to concentrate on getting a full-time ride back in the NASCAR Nextel Cup Series. Newt Moore is a name you've probably heard quite a bit around racing, not as a driver, but as a crew chief. He's currently working on Johnny Sauter's Busch Series car at Bruco Motorsports in Kentucky. Adam Alexander went by recently and filed this report.
Now Johnny Sauter, a young hot rod. What has that transition been like for you on the crew chief box?
Oh, my gosh. Well, Schrader and Bobby both said that maybe these young guys can drive this stuff, but I sure can't. So I want to try to find me a young guy and see if he could drive what I got. We've been doing pretty good so far. We've not won any races. We've been close and trying to get over the hump. But Johnny's, man, he's something. You got to calm him down. And I love working with Schrader and Bobby both, and it's just different. The skill levels, there's different skill levels, and you know, them two guys you mentioned are way up there. And of course, Johnny, he's still learning, but man, I'm gonna tell you, he's 100%. Not saying Bobby and Schrader wasn't; they were 100% also, but it's just a little different with a kid.
Join the Fans Car Racing program today and become a member of the most exciting fan-based sponsorship program in NASCAR. With the Fans Car membership starting at just $37, you can be a part of the action sooner than you think. So log on to www.thefanscar.com or call our services group toll-free at 866-512-8764 to learn more about the benefits and rewards of membership. Don't just watch, be a part of the action. More of today's show right after this.
Gentlemen, start your engine!
The stars of NASCAR rock Pocono Raceway twice this year. June 13th, it's the Pocono 500. August 1st, it's the Pennsylvania 500. Both races are sure to sell out. Call toll-free 1-800-RACEWAY. That's 1-800-RACEWAY, or visit PoconoRaceway.com.
From Daytona to Darlington.
Richard Petty may be setting it up for a slingshot.
From Miami to Michigan.
At the checkered flag, maybe Jarrett by inches.
From the pits to the turns. For over 30 years, NASCAR fans have taken us anywhere, and we have taken them everywhere. We are the voice of NASCAR. We are the Motor Racing Network.
If you've watched Raceline for a while, you've certainly seen the name Chuck Bown, Jim Bown, and CrewSchool.com. They're one of our sponsors on the show, but they offer quite a service to folks wanting to get involved in NASCAR racing, not from the driving standpoint, but from the crewing side. Crew chiefs, crew members, team workers, folks involved in every aspect of the sport have come through CrewSchool.com. And today we take you inside for a talk with Chuck Bown and a look at their facility in Asheboro, North Carolina.
Well, you know, racing is expensive. It's always been hard to attain enough sponsorship to race like you prefer to race. So Jim, my brother, always kind of owned his own race cars and had his own shop, he and my father, and they relied on a lot of volunteer help. So they got quite used to taking people in part-time that had other regular jobs and helping them in the evenings on the race cars and teaching them how to do all this stuff, which is very complex and there's a lot to it. Well, we've had some students that I don't think have ever changed a flat tire on their street car, and we have others that are engineers or have a lot of fabrication experience, maybe from the heating and air industry or whatever. So quite a variety of backgrounds, from school teachers to everything you can imagine. A great deal of them are ready to enter with a Craftsman truck team, Busch Grand National or Nextel Cup at entry level. they're not expected to go in and be a department head or a foreman or so on and so forth, but they have the basic knowledge of fabrication. They do a lot of it. They have done a lot of it for 10 weeks, a lot of assembly. They've understood and learned about setup, and we quiz them on and test them on it a lot to where you can't fool us. We're a small operation. It's just Jim and I. We don't recommend anybody that wants to come here and just slide through and say they put in their 10 weeks and it's well and fine, but getting a job might be a little tough. But those that really care, they've had a lot of success with it. As far as how to build something, how to locate a body, how to go about the process of doing it, that's pretty standard. It's just that it gets more detailed and the numbers might change, the dimensions might change, but as far as preparation, that really hasn't changed a great deal. It's still a lot of hard work to build race cars. This week's Crew School Tech Tip, I'm going to talk about how we scale a car. We use these electronic scales this day and age. In the old days, we used grain scales that were large, bulky, and heavy, but they worked very well. But the new computerized scales give you the weight of each wheel independently, instantly, and they figure out whatever percentages you want. Because when we weigh a car in NASCAR racing, we're looking for the minimum total that the rules allow, but they also have a minimum total for the right side so that we don't get left side heavy and build illegal race cars. And then we're also very concerned about our front to rear weight ratio, which NASCAR doesn't care what we do with that. It's our option to have it nose heavy or tail heavy or 50-50. So we're looking at the total weight, the right side weight, and the amount of nose weight in percentages. I'm Chuck Bown, and that was this week's CrewSchool.com Tech Tip. To launch your motorsports career, look us up on the website at CrewSchool.com.
U.S. men and women in uniform in 180 countries are on board for today's show, broadcast on AFN, the American Forces Network. All of us at Raceline appreciate what you do. We hope we're bringing you a touch of home with today's broadcast.
Speedway Illustrated, America's hottest magazine covering stock car racing. Get 12 big issues, a full year for just $1.25 an issue. Call toll-free 1-888-837-3684. From big league NASCAR to local tracks, the drivers, the cars, the personalities, everything you want to know about stock car racing for $1.25 a month. Call now, 888-837-3684. Speedway Illustrated.
When you first see those turns screaming towards you at 165 miles per hour, you think this is impossible. It's insane. But then you do it, and soon you're thinking there's no place on earth you'd rather be than Richmond.
Don't miss the SunTrust Indy Challenge June 26th at Richmond International Raceway. Call 866-455-RACE. And for a chance to win a 2004 Corvette convertible, visit any SunTrust branch before June 30th. No purchase required. See branch for rules.
Richmond, it's racing perfection.
Welcome back to this week's edition of Raceline. We're off to Dover International Speedway, the big old bad Monster Mile this week for a triple-header weekend of racing, trucks, Busch, and Cup cars there. We'll bring you the news from all three of those garages next week here on the show. Hope you can join us then and every week here on Raceline. Well, Mary Scully this week is talking about a phenomenon that we've seen a lot of this year. That is caution flag endings of races. Happened again in the Busch race at Charlotte just last week, and it's happened about a half dozen times this year in Busch and Nextel Cup Series events. Finishing under caution, Mary Scully says, is not always a bad thing.
NASCAR racing has always been about the show. It's entertaining to watch drivers circle an oval track, slam into each other, and race neck and neck to the checkered flag. Big Bill France and all the subsequent Frances have none of it. But in the past, NASCAR officials kept a balance between racing and entertainment. Now I'm afraid that rapid growth and NASCAR's large TV audience have turned the tables. Not long ago, Jimmy Johnson said that many aspects of racing, such as the new point system, are based on entertainment. In some respects, it really isn't about racing anymore, he said. It is racing, it's what we do, but our sport is driven by corporate involvement and fan viewership, and there has to be a good show to watch. The mass audience is pressuring NASCAR to end every race with a green flag run. NASCAR decides at each racetrack the minimum number of laps drivers need to have a safe run under the green flag. If a caution happens just prior to this minimum, they red flag the race and have a restart. If the caution falls with less than the minimum number of laps NASCAR will allow at that track, as was the case at Talladega, the race ends under caution. For the safety of the drivers, that's as far as NASCAR is willing to go. The fans have been involved in racing for many years, except the fact that some races end on a caution, whether it's weather or an accident. Chances are they've already seen several hours of racing with plenty of excitement. The drivers don't want a last dash to the finish line. Cal Petty noted that there are no guarantees in racing, that there is no controlling the weather and no controlling the outcome of a race. So NASCAR, stick to your rules on this one. It's just too dangerous to end every race on a green flag run. Entertainment cannot supersede driver safety. I'm Mary Scully, editor of Racing Milestones magazine, and that's my point of view.
Kevin Harvick is known as a cocky, aggressive driver, ready to lunge at an opponent on the track or off. But there's another side. It's all in this month's issue of Racing Milestones magazine. On sale now at Auto Trader racks in convenience stores nationwide.
Thanks, Mary. By the way, if you have any kind of suggestions about Mary's thoughts or comments about what she says, go to our website, click on the icon. You can send her a letter directly and give her your thoughts on her thoughts. Now time for our Fans Forum question of the week. Last week we asked you about the All-Star race being run at Charlotte. Should it stay there, or is it time for it to move around? Here's the one we chose as this week's winner. Brandon Powell of Nashville, Tennessee, watches Raceline on Fox 17 out of Nashville. Brandon says we need a change in this race, so let's go to a track that Nextel Cup Series will not be visiting next year. Fans and drivers will think of it as the All-Stars racing on a lone track. And I guess, Brandon, you're talking about Nashville Super Speedway or maybe Kentucky. That's not a bad idea. So, Brandon, we're sending you our Mechanics Wear gift pack and a year subscription to Racing Milestones. Here's this week's question. How much attention do you pay to the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series? Some say it's better racing than Nextel Cup Series racing. What do you think? Go to our website at racelineonline.com.
Answer this week's Fans Forum question by going to our website at racelineonline.com. If we use your answer next week, you'll win a year's subscription to Racing Milestones and a gift pack from Mechanics Wear, including a pair of NASCAR's favorite Mechanics Wear gloves. The web address again is racelineonline.com.
Surviving in the world of NASCAR racing is a tough business. To succeed, race mechanics use only products they know can take the heat. That's why 41 out of 43 Winston Cup teams use Mechanics gloves. Our gloves protect their hands from the elements while giving them power and control. They work faster, safer, and cleaner, and that can certainly help in an environment when only the strong survive. Mechanics gloves, the tool that fits like a glove. Available at most auto parts stores or online at mechanics.com.
last week here on Raceline, we talked with John Andretti. He was practicing a car, testing a car for DEI at Charlotte. And, of course, last week in the Coke 600, he ran that #1 car, sponsored by Snap-on Tools, and finished a respectable 19th position. But that's not going to get him a sponsor full-time, and it's not going to get him a full-time ride. John is still working on a deal to come back into the series full-time. Now, things have been better for John. Of course, he drove for Richard Petty and Petty Enterprises. Did you know he also drove for Cale Yarborough? And back in 1997, won the Pepsi 400 at Daytona. Raceline was there and talked to John about the way things were going, and it's here on our Wheel and Engineering Made in America Racing Legends.
And I was really worried about this race. I knew I had a race car that could win the race, but you know, the heat's high, and you know, there's a lot of tough competition, and you know, when being there with the black 3 on my back, I was worried, and then they had that crash, and I think I don't know if he was congratulating me or what he was doing, but he pulled up next to me, and I think he thought the race was over, and then they went back green, and I necessarily didn't want that to happen, but I knew that we had a good run because the RCA Ford accelerates better than anybody else's car on the restarts, and so as long as I was in front, I was safe. It's when I had to pass somebody that was hard.
John's still a good race car driver. DEI knows that. If they can find a sponsor, hopefully they'll put him back in that one car full time. If not, I bet he'll find a ride with another team. Well, again, this week we go to Dover International Speedway. It's called the Monster Mile because it's one bad, mean racetrack. Ward Burton knows that for a fact.
Dover's a tough racetrack. Daggone concrete makes it really difficult to get the car right. It's a place that can eat race cars up. It's downhill entering the corner, uphill coming out of the corner. It's a very easy place to run fast if your car's right. It's a very easy place to run horrible when it's wrong.
So everybody agrees it's a mean, tough old racetrack, even after 600 miles last week at the Lowe's Motor Speedway. Again, Tiffany's not with us this week to share in the picking time. It's just Mike and myself. And first, let's go to Steve Post down in Charlotte. What do you think, Steve?
Joe, the Monster Mile in Dover, it's probably the toughest track that these guys will face. And I'm going to pick the guy that's had the breakout season, Jeff Gordon. He's won there 4 times before, and he's my pick to win on Sunday.
Jeff Gordon, that's a good pick. What do you think, Mike?
Well, you know, I've got to go with somebody who's won there a couple times and is really on a roll right now, and somebody who needs to feel what it's like to be the points leader this late in the year. I'm going to go with Jimmy Johnson. He's really been racing well. He's got some great equipment under him, and he's on fire. I think Jimmy Johnson's the one to watch.
Coming off that big win at Lowe's Motor Speedway last week, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go to victory lane, but I'm going to go with Ryan Newman, who won both races at Dover last year. If anybody needs to turn things around and get a win this year, it's Ryan Newman. He's won Bud Poles 3 times. He's had 4 top 5, but no wins as of yet. So I think Ryan's going to pick up the win. We'll see how it goes this week at Dover. Next week here on Raceline, we'll preview the 14th race of the year, the Pocono 500, at that weird 3-cornered racetrack, Pocono International Raceway in Pennsylvania. And, of course, we'll bring you all the news from the weekend's events at Dover International Speedway. Hope you can join us then. Meanwhile, check us out anytime on the World Wide Web at RacelineOnline.com. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you again next week.
Raceline is brought to you by Mechanics Wear, the official glove of NASCAR. Wear what the mechanics wear. Go to mechanics.com to see our online catalog. Also, by crewschool.com, your first step to a career in motorsports. By Fast Track, your weekly source for all the NASCAR news. By Wheel & Engineering, all products made in America. By MRN Radio, the voice of NASCAR. And by the Fans Car, letting you be part of the action.